So I'm going to talk today about data being colourful, data being in full Technicolor, and particularly the story of how myself and my collaborator Andrew, who's not here today, got inspired by data. And maybe you can get inspired by data as well, because it's not just affecting the arts. So just a little bit about me. So I'm a writer. I've worked previously in more traditional media, like a bit of television, theatre. This is some web virals that I did for the BBC, where a woman jumps out of a cake and does a strip for a guy that turns out to be her son. So you can see for a while I've been interested in how to create material that's kind of transgressive, confronting, even just interesting, you know, something that's new. The problem is that these days it's really hard to do that, because we're confronted every day by material that's, you know, really shocking, really edgy, and it's really hard to be different. The avant-garde, you know, has been around for a long time, since the 20s and 30s, and has been shocking us since then. So it's hard to be new. Here's an example. So this is a poet called Kershaw, and he won one of the most prestigious poetry prizes last year. And nothing against Graham personally. I mean, you know, he's a great guy. But this kind of writing, you know, with the similes and the metaphors and, you know, the stuff that we learn at school, you know, it's great. But it doesn't get me out of bed in the morning. And to me, comparing, you know, the haystacks to ziggurat pyramids, it doesn't excite me. And I have a feeling that it doesn't excite many people either, because not many people read poetry anymore. So how I got inspired, and how my collaborator Andrew got inspired, is by data, using data to inform a new direction in creative practice. So here's some examples. You probably heard about big data. This guy, Nate Silver, predicted the past two presidential elections using data science. This is the Large Hadron Collider. It collects data from about 250 million sensors to, you know, inform new insights into the fundamental nature of reality and physics. Data is also changing charities. So it's literally changing the world, changing the lives of some of the world's poorest people. This is a startup called Give Directly. And rather than going through a middleman, you literally transfer your funds directly to the phones of some of Kenya's poorest people. This is another charity. Well, that's not a charity, that's a parasitic worm. But there's a charity that deals with this worm. Now, it's unlike, you know, HIV/AIDS or malaria. This is a worm that doesn't actually kill people. It's a parasitic worm that just stunts growth. But by looking at the data, by looking at the evidence, they found that treating this particular worm has a transformational effect on communities, and as does the Giving Directly startup as well. So data has transformed all three of those fields, and we asked ourselves, can data transform art? So we did some research, and that's not a novel question. So people have been doing data art for a while. This is a famous work called Listening Post, and what you can see there is messages from, I think, chat rooms. It was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, being transmitted onto those little screens. This is a wonderful website called You Are Listening to Los Angeles, and what they do is they layer ambient music from SoundCloud and data from police broadcasts in LA. This is Google Poetics, which you might have heard of, where they just take live data from people's search terms and transform them into poems. So we looked at all this and we thought, you know, can we get inspired by data as well? And we decided to use Twitter, where there's 500 million tweets per day. And here's a couple of the works that we've been doing over the past year or so. So this one's called Don't Leave Me Baby, and what we did is we found that people were saying "Don't leave me" a lot on Twitter. Sort of every few minutes they were asking their loved ones not to leave them. So we combined those tweets with all the other people on Twitter that were saying, "I'd never leave you, I'd never do anything to hurt you," for a sort of a real-time work. This is a work we did a few months ago at the International Symposium of Electronic Art, and we got the audience to ask questions, and then we matched them up with online real-time search data. So someone's saying things are okay, aren't they? And the response from the internet hive mind is stop stressing over it. And here's the work that we're doing at Underbelly that Julia's helping to publicize. So this one is called Everything is Going to Be Okay. I hope you come and check it out. We're working on it in the lab over the next week or so. So what we're doing here is taking real-time data from Twitter and sort of recontextualizing it to tell stories, to tell news stories, to tell love stories. So here, someone said, you know, the classic sort of sweet talk, you have beautiful eyes, but the tweets come back, you have beautiful eyes and a moustache. So what I sort of take from that is that data is colorful, and particularly it's a full spectrum of voices that are often unpredictable. So if I'd written that line as a writer, I'd probably have written you have beautiful eyes. I probably wouldn't have added the moustache bit. But what you get when you look at real-time data is all this sort of unpredictable voices coming through, and that's I think the key insight here is that you know, it's not just going by hunch. It's opening yourself up to the evidence and seeing what the data gives you. This guy, Bakhtin, calls this heteroglossia, this idea that we incorporate hundreds of different voices and dialects into the one work. The other insight, just to wrap up, is that data can help us understand the world around us. So just to finish with the good old Simpsons analogy. So there's an episode of The Simpsons where Lisa creates a startup called Springface, so a sort of a quasi Facebook. And of course everything goes wrong and everyone becomes addicted to Springface and obsessed with it. And the whole society's breaking down because everyone's, you know, engaged in Facebook wars or just, you know, obsessed with changing their profile pictures. And so Lisa goes into the source code and pulls Springface down off the internet. And now in reality, of course, we can't do that. Even if we could, I don't know that we necessarily would. But what we can do is use the data that's coming out of all these data portals like Twitter and Facebook, use them to help us think about what's happening to our world around us. So that's about it.